Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching Jupiter grow larger on the main screen. His crew had been mining asteroids in this region for 3 months now, and they were almost ready to head back to Earth. The mining operation had gone well, and their cargo holds were full of rare metals that would keep the shipyards busy for years. Dr. Lisa Warren was checking her equipment in the science lab when the proximity alarm started blaring. She rushed to the bridge where Jake was already calling for a full sensor sweep of the area. The navigation officer, Pete Collins, was running his hands through his hair as he stared at his displays. "Captain, there is something massive out there in Jupiter's shadow," Pete said. "It is not showing up on our standard scans, but the gravitational sensors are going crazy." Jake ordered the ship to change course toward the anomaly. Security Chief Amy Foster checked her weapon systems, even though she knew they would be useless against anything truly dangerous. The New Horizon was a civilian vessel with only basic defensive capabilities. As they got closer, the object began to appear on their visual sensors. What they saw made everyone on the bridge fall silent. It was a ship, but unlike anything humans had ever built. The vessel stretched over 3 kilometers from end to end, and its hull seemed to shimmer with an oily rainbow sheen. Strange curves and angles covered its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "My God," Lisa whispered. "That is definitely not human." Jake ordered a full stop when they were still several kilometers away. The alien ship appeared to be dead in space with no energy signatures or movement. There were what looked like massive tears in its hull and debris floating around it in a slow orbit. "Captain, I am reading some kind of atmosphere inside the intact sections," Pete reported. "The composition is strange, but it might be breathable with suits." Amy Foster was already suiting up when Jake made the decision to board the derelict. Lisa grabbed her xenoarchaeology equipment and joined the boarding party. They took a small shuttle across the empty space between the ships and found what looked like an airlock near the vessel's midsection. The airlock cycled open after Lisa connected her equipment to what appeared to be a control panel. The symbols that flashed across the alien interface meant nothing to any of them, but somehow the door responded to her touch. Inside the ship, the corridors were enormous and seemed to bend in ways that made no geometric sense. "The walls are warm," Amy said as she touched the strange metallic surface. "And I swear they just shifted when I pressed against them." They moved deeper into the ship, following what seemed to be a main corridor. Emergency lighting still functioned in some sections, casting everything in an eerie blue glow. The alien architecture made them all feel dizzy as passages curved back on themselves in impossible ways. Lisa's equipment detected what appeared to be a central command area, and they headed in that direction. The command center was a vast spherical chamber with control surfaces arranged in patterns that suggested the aliens had very different body shapes than humans. Crystalline displays still showed flickering symbols and what looked like star charts. "Pete, can you interface with any of these systems?" Jake asked. Pete connected his portable computer to what looked like a data port. After several minutes of trying different connection protocols, something finally worked. Streams of alien data began flooding across his screen faster than he could process. "Captain, I am getting something," Pete said. "The translation software is having trouble, but I think these are ship logs." Lisa worked alongside Pete, trying to decode the alien language. The ship's computer seemed to be helping them somehow, as if it wanted its story to be told. Slowly, a picture began to emerge from the data fragments. The ship belonged to something called the Hegemony. It was a vast empire that controlled thousands of star systems across the galaxy. The logs spoke of younger species that were discovered and evaluated for their potential threat level. Most were simply ignored as primitive, but some were marked for elimination. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa called him over to her display. "According to these logs, Earth was detected 30 years ago when our radio signals reached their monitoring stations. The data was clear and terrifying. Humanity had been classified as a potential threat due to their rapid technological development and aggressive nature. The Hegemony had decided that humans should be eliminated before they could become a problem. A fleet had been dispatched to sterilize Earth of all life." "How long do we have?" Jake asked. Pete was frantically cross-referencing the alien star charts with human navigation data. According to their travel times, the main fleet should arrive in about 20 years. But there was more to discover in the ship's memory banks. The vessel they were exploring had not been damaged in an accident. It had been fleeing from something that terrified even the mighty Hegemony. The log spoke in fearful terms of ancient enemies called the Silent Ones, who had once challenged the Empire's dominance. Amy found weapon systems that were still partially functional. The alien ship carried enough firepower to destroy entire cities, but its crew had abandoned it rather than face whatever had been pursuing them. The last log entries were filled with panic and references to shadows that moved between stars. The crew evacuated in escape pods, Amy reported. But according to the sensors, those pods never made it to any inhabited system. Lisa discovered something else in the deeper data banks. The ship's manufacturing systems could create new equipment and even modify existing technology. The aliens used some kind of hybrid biological and mechanical system that could adapt and grow. It was technology beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. Jake made the decision to claim the derelict under salvage laws. They would tow it back to Earth and hope that human scientists could unlock its secrets in time. The New Horizon barely had enough power to move the massive alien vessel, but they managed to get it into a stable orbit around Jupiter. As they prepared for the long journey home, Jake looked back at the alien ship one more time. In 20 years, the hegemony fleet would arrive expecting to find a helpless primitive world. Instead, they might find something very different. Humanity had always been good at learning from their enemies and adapting their weapons. The broken alien warship drifted behind them as they began the journey that would change everything. Hidden in its data banks were the tools that would either save humanity or transform them into something unrecognizable. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same again. Director Helen Cross walked through the massive underground facility that had been carved out of the Rocky Mountains in record time. The alien ship now rested in the center of the complex, surrounded by teams of scientists and engineers working around the clock. Every major nation on Earth had contributed their best minds to Project Defiance, but progress was frustratingly slow. Dr. Alex Turner rubbed his tired eyes as he stared at the alien console that had resisted all attempts at activation. For 6 months he had tried every approach he could think of, but the technology remained as mysterious as the day they found it. The alien system seemed to be waiting for something, but no one could figure out what. Engineer Maria Santos was having better luck with the smaller components they had carefully removed from the ship. She had managed to create crude copies of some alien circuits, but they only worked for a few minutes before burning out. The materials seemed to require some kind of biological component that human technology could not replicate. The breakthrough came when linguist Dr. Kevin Hayes finally cracked the alien control interfaces. He discovered that the symbols were not just writing, but also represented emotional and mental states. The alien technology did not just respond to commands, but actually learned from the people using it. "Helen, you need to see this," Kevin called excitedly from his workstation. "The ship's computer has been trying to understand us this whole time." Kevin had connected himself to the alien interface using a modified neural headset. The symbols on his screen were now responding to his thoughts and emotions rather than just his typed commands. The alien computer was adapting its responses to match human thinking patterns. "It is learning our language by reading my mind," Kevin explained. "But more than that, it is trying to understand how humans think and feel." Within days, other researchers were able to establish similar connections with different alien systems. Dr. Sarah Mitchell found that the ship's navigation computer could interface directly with human spatial thinking. Pilot instructor Bob Clark discovered that the fighter craft controls responded to reflexes and instincts rather than conscious commands. Test pilot Grace Kelly volunteered to be the first human to actually fly one of the alien fighter craft that had been recovered from the main ship's hangar bay. The small vessel was sleek and organic-looking with controls that seemed to grow from the cockpit walls. When Grace settled into the pilot seat, the ship immediately began responding to her presence. "The controls are moving to fit my hands," Grace reported over the radio. "It feels like the ship is alive." When Grace activated the flight systems, the change was immediate and dramatic. Her reflexes became lightning fast and her spatial awareness expanded beyond anything she had ever experienced. The fighter craft moved like an extension of her own body, responding to her thoughts before she was even fully aware of them. But the enhancement came with unexpected side effects. After her first test flight, Grace was more aggressive and territorial than anyone had ever seen her. She became possessive of her fighter craft and hostile toward anyone who tried to examine it too closely. The alien technology was changing her at a fundamental level. Admiral Roy Stevens oversaw the construction of humanity's first hybrid warships in orbital shipyards around Earth. These vessels combined human engineering with alien technology, creating something that neither species could have built alone. The ships were smaller than the alien dreadnought, but far more maneuverable and adaptable. The hybrid ships grew rather than being built in the traditional sense. Human crews would install basic frameworks, and then the alien technology would expand and modify the structures according to some inner logic. Each ship became unique as the technology adapted to the personality and thinking patterns of its crew. Captain Larry Mitchell commanded the first completed hybrid destroyer and found that his ship responded to the crew's collective emotions and decisions. During combat simulations, the vessel would anticipate threats and modify its defenses before the crew even recognized the danger. It was like having a ship that could think and fight alongside its human operators. But the deeper integration with alien technology was changing the crews as well. Pilots like Grace Kelly, who spent the most time interfaced with the hybrid systems, began to exhibit enhanced cognitive abilities. They could process information faster and make complex calculations that should have been impossible for unaugmented humans. The enhanced humans also became increasingly different from their unmodified companions. They developed an almost telepathic connection with each other and their ships, but found it harder to relate to normal people. Some began to see unenhanced humans as slow and limited, rather than as fellow members of their species. Dr. Paula Green studied the psychological effects of the alien technology on human users. She found that prolonged exposure caused permanent changes to brain structure and hormone production. The enhanced individuals were stronger, faster, and smarter, but they were also more aggressive and less empathetic toward others. "We are creating super soldiers," Paula reported to the project leadership, "but we may be losing our humanity in the process." Helen Cross faced an impossible decision as the hegemony fleet drew closer to Earth. The alien technology offered incredible power and the ability to fight back against humanity's enemies, but using it meant changing what it meant to be human. The enhanced pilots and crews were becoming something new, and there was no way to reverse the process. The hybrid warships were humanity's only hope of survival, but they required crews who could interface with the alien systems. Each new ship meant creating more enhanced humans who might eventually see their unmodified companions as inferior beings. The technology that could save Earth might also destroy human civilization from within. As more hybrid vessels took shape in the orbital shipyards, Helen watched the enhanced crews moving with inhuman grace and coordination. They were still recognizably human, but something fundamental had changed. The question was whether humanity could retain its essential nature while embracing the tools of its own transformation. Time was running out and choices had to be made. The hegemony fleet would arrive in less than 15 years, and Earth needed defenders who could match alien technology. The broken warship had given humanity the tools for survival, but the price might be higher than anyone had imagined. Admiral Victoria Lane stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the edge of the solar system through the enhanced displays that seemed to grow from the ship's living walls. The hybrid technology had transformed her flagship into something that was part machine and part organism. She could feel the ship's systems responding to her emotions as the moment of truth finally arrived. The hegemony fleet emerged from hyperspace exactly where the alien logs had predicted they would appear. 47 massive dreadnoughts materialized beyond Pluto's orbit, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their dark hulls bristled with weapons that could crack planets, and their formation moved with the precision of a machine. Commander Dan Wright led the first response from his fighter squadron stationed near Neptune. The enhanced pilots under his command had trained for this moment for over a decade, but seeing the enemy fleet in person was still overwhelming. Each alien dreadnought was the size of a small city, and their escort fighters numbered in the thousands. "All units, this is Dan Wright," he transmitted to his squadron. "Remember, they think we are still throwing rocks and shooting chemical rockets at each other." The hybrid fighters moved through space like living creatures rather than mechanical constructs. Their hulls shifted and adapted as they flew, and their weapons grew from the ships themselves when needed. The pilots had become something more than human during their years of training, but they retained the chaotic creativity that made them dangerous. The aliens sent scout ships ahead of their main fleet, expecting to find primitive defenses around the outer planets. Instead, they encountered something that defied all their tactical models. Human fighters moved in patterns that seemed random but were actually based on predator hunting. Behaviors evolved over millions of years. Captain Sue Martinez commanded a squadron of hybrid destroyers hiding in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Her ships had grown camouflage that made them almost invisible against the rocky background. The alien technology had learned to mimic natural environments in ways that confused even the most advanced sensors. The first engagement took place near Neptune's largest moon when alien scouts tried to establish a forward observation post. Dan Wright's fighters attacked from multiple directions using the moon's gravity well to slingshot themselves into impossible attack angles. The enhanced pilots could withstand acceleration forces that would kill normal humans. The alien scouts expected ordered formations and predictable tactics like every other species they had encountered. Instead, they faced opponents who fought like Earth's apex predators using ambush tactics and pack hunting strategies. Human fighters would appear from behind asteroids, strike hard, and vanish before the aliens could respond. Effectively, Colonel Ben Parker led the defense of the Jupiter system where several alien dreadnoughts tried to establish a staging area. His hybrid cruisers had grown specialized weapons that could adapt their output to match specific targets. The ships themselves seemed to learn from each engagement, becoming more effective with every battle. The battle for Neptune's moons became humanity's first major victory against the hegemony. Sue Martinez used her destroyers to herd the alien fleet into the complex gravity fields around the ice moons, where their massive ships became vulnerable to hit and run attacks. The aliens had never fought in such chaotic environments before. Grace Kelly had become something barely recognizable as human after years of interfacing with her fighter craft. Her reflexes operated at superhuman speeds, and her spatial awareness extended far beyond normal human limits. She could sense enemy movements through her ship's sensors, as if they were extensions of her own nervous system. The enhanced pilots developed new tactics that no military academy had ever taught. They used their emotional states to control their ship's responses, turning anger into weapon power and fear into defensive systems. The alien technology amplified human emotions and channeled them into combat effectiveness. The hegemony fleet commanders could not understand what they were facing. Their tactical computers showed impossible maneuvers and weapons that adapted faster than their countermeasures could be deployed. The humans fought with a creativity and unpredictability that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Admiral Lane watched from the Retribution as her hybrid fleet engaged the enemy main force near Jupiter. Her ship had grown to nearly twice its original size as the alien technology expanded its capabilities. The vessel's living hull could repair damage almost instantly, and its weapons could reconfigure themselves for any target. The aliens tried to use their superior numbers and firepower to overwhelm the human defenses, but they discovered that their enemies refused to fight by conventional rules. Human ships would ram enemy vessels knowing their living hulls could survive impacts that would destroy normal craft. Pilots would sacrifice themselves in attacks that seemed suicidal but somehow succeeded. Captain Joe Adams commanded a hybrid battleship that had developed its own personality after years of bonding with its crew. The ship seemed to anticipate enemy movements and would sometimes fire its weapons before the crew even saw the targets. The boundary between human and machine had become impossible to define. The turning point came when the enhanced fighters began coordinating their attacks without radio communication. The pilots had developed a form of telepathic connection through their interface with the alien technology. They could share tactical information instantly and coordinate complex maneuvers that looked like choreographed dances. The hegemony forces found themselves being systematically dismantled by an enemy that fought like no species they had ever encountered. Human tactics were based on millions of years of evolution as persistence hunters and pack predators. They would pursue wounded prey relentlessly and attack from unexpected directions. By the end of the battle, only a dozen alien dreadnoughts remained operational, and they were fleeing toward the edge of the solar system. The human hybrid fleet pursued them like wolves chasing wounded deer, showing no mercy to an enemy that had come to exterminate their species. The survivors would carry word back to the hegemony about what humanity had become. Victoria Lane stood among the wreckage of the alien fleet, feeling the satisfaction of her ship as it fed on the destroyed enemy vessels. The hybrid technology was changing not just individual humans, but human civilization itself. They had won their first battle, but in doing so, they had become something the galaxy had never seen before. Admiral Chris Morgan stood in the command center of his flagship, as it moved through hyperspace toward the first known hegemony outpost. The ship had grown far beyond its original design during the months since the battle at Neptune. Its living hull now stretched over 2 kilometers, and weapon systems had evolved that no human engineer could have imagined. The pursuing fleet behind him consisted of ships that barely resembled their original forms. Each vessel had adapted to its crew's personality and fighting style, creating a collection of unique predators rather than standardized warships. The hybrid technology had learned from every battle and incorporated new capabilities with each engagement. Captain Diane Foster commanded the deep strike vessel Nemesis, which had specialized for stealth and infiltration missions. Her ship could change its hull composition to match local space conditions, making it nearly invisible to most sensors. Diane herself had changed almost as much as her vessel during years of interfacing with the alien systems. The enhanced humans had developed abilities that went far beyond their original biology. They could survive in environments that would kill normal people, and their reaction times had accelerated to superhuman levels. More importantly, they had learned to think and coordinate as a collective intelligence, while retaining their individual personalities. The first hegemony outpost they encountered was a massive space station orbiting a red giant star. Intelligence gathered from captured alien data suggested it served as a forward supply depot for further expansion into human space. The station's defenses included automated weapon platforms and a small fleet of patrol vessels. Diane's stealth ships moved through the system like ghosts, studying the enemy installations and mapping their weaknesses. The hybrid vessels could analyze alien technology in real time and develop countermeasures faster than any conventional computer system. Each ship shared its discoveries with the rest of the fleet through the telepathic network the crews had developed. The station's defenses are based on mathematical predictions, Diane reported to Chris. They expect attacks to follow logical patterns. The human fleet attacked using tactics that violated every principle of rational warfare. Ships would appear to retreat, then suddenly reverse course for suicide runs that somehow succeeded without destroying the attackers. The living hulls could survive impacts and energy discharges that would vaporize normal vessels. Lieutenant Gary Thompson piloted a fighter that had grown specialized for close combat operations. His craft could extend blade-like projections from its hull for ramming attacks or reshape itself into different configurations during flight. Gary's nervous system had integrated so completely with his ship that he could barely function. Outside of the cockpit, the alien defenders found themselves facing an enemy that adapted faster than their automated systems could compensate. Human ships would change their energy signatures in the middle of battle, making targeting solutions impossible to maintain. The crews seemed to anticipate defensive responses before they were even implemented. Captain Steve Walsh commanded a hybrid cruiser that specialized in electronic warfare against alien systems. His ship could interface directly with enemy computers and corrupt their programming using viral code that evolved like a living organism. The boundary between biological and digital had become meaningless to the enhanced humans. The space station fell within hours as human forces systematically dismantled its defenses and eliminated its garrison. But the victory was just the beginning of a campaign that would span dozens of star systems. The humans were not content to simply defend their territory, but had decided to eliminate the threat at its source. Dr. Paul Anderson worked aboard the research vessel, Discovery, analyzing captured alien technology and biological samples. His studies revealed that the original warnings about Silent Ones referred to species that had undergone similar technological fusion. The galaxy had seen this transformation before, but never on such a scale or with such rapid progression. The hegemony has been avoiding certain regions of space for thousands of years, Paul reported to the Fleet Command. Areas where species like us might have evolved. The human fleet moved deeper into alien territory following navigation data extracted from captured vessels. They encountered other species that had suffered under hegemony rule, and some offered to join the campaign against their former oppressors. The reptilian Korthak provided intelligence about alien weak points while avoiding direct contact with the enhanced humans. Colonel Frank Davis led ground assault operations against hegemony installations that could not be destroyed from space. His enhanced Marines could survive in hostile environments without life support, and their weapons had grown to become extensions of their own bodies. The transformation had made them perfect soldiers, but increasingly alien to normal humans. The insectoid Vrex fled in terror whenever human ships appeared in their systems. They had evolved collective intelligence over millions of years, but the human telepathic network operated on principles they could not understand. The enhanced humans seemed to share thoughts and emotions in ways that violated the Vrex understanding of individual consciousness. As the campaign progressed, the human ships continued to evolve and adapt. Some vessels grew to enormous sizes while others became smaller and more specialized. The crews changed alongside their ships, developing new abilities and losing others as they became something beyond their original species. Captain Linda Hayes commanded a vessel that had become more organism than machine after months of deep space operations. Her crew could survive indefinitely in space, and their ship could sustain itself by feeding on stellar radiation and cosmic dust. They had become truly alien while retaining memories of their human origins. The Hegemony Military Command finally began to understand what they were facing when entire star systems went silent without any distress signals. Human forces were not conquering territory in any conventional sense, but were systematically eliminating all traces of alien presence. They fought wars of extermination rather than conquest. News of the human advance spread throughout the galaxy, causing panic among species that had never questioned hegemony dominance. Some civilizations offered tribute, hoping to avoid destruction, while others began developing their own defenses against the new threat from Earth. The balance of power that had existed for millennia was collapsing. The enhanced humans showed no interest in ruling over other species or claiming territory for themselves. They wanted only to ensure that nothing could ever again threaten Earth or humanity. The alien technology had amplified their protective instincts until they became an unstoppable force, dedicated to eliminating existential threats. Admiral Morgan watched star charts showing the steady advance of human forces toward the galactic core where the hegemony capital awaited. His fleet had become something that no empire in galactic history had ever faced before. They were evolution accelerated and guided by intelligence warfare refined by millions of years of survival and technological fusion that created capabilities beyond imagination. Fleet Admiral Tony Rogers gazed at the massive ring world that surrounded the ancient star at the center of hegemony space. The artificial structure was larger than Earth's orbit and had been the seat of alien power for over 50,000 years. Billions of beings lived on its inner surface while massive weapons platforms protected it from any conceivable attack. The human armada that had gathered for this final assault numbered in the thousands, but each ship was unique. Some had grown to enormous sizes while others remained small and swift. All of them pulsed with organic life that had merged completely with their mechanical systems. The boundary between crew and vessel had disappeared entirely. Captain Lisa Brown stood in the command center of her ship, Nemesis, watching the enemy defenses through sensors that had become extensions of her own nervous system. Her vessel had evolved far beyond any recognizable design, and now resembled some deep-sea creature more than a spacecraft. The living hull rippled with bioluminescent patterns as it communicated with other ships in the fleet. The hegemony had awakened weapons that had slumbered in the galactic core for millennia. Planet killers emerged from hidden bunkers while ancient dreadnoughts that dwarfed even their modern counterparts powered up their systems. The aliens were prepared to destroy the ring world itself, rather than let it fall to the creatures that had once been human. They are activating something massive in the star's core, reported Dr. Nancy Clark from her science vessel. It looks like they plan to destabilize the entire system. The enhanced humans had long since stopped thinking like their original species. They operated as a collective intelligence that could process information and make decisions at speeds that no individual mind could match. When the ancient weapons activated, the human fleet responded as a single organism. Commander Jeff Wilson led the first wave of fighters toward the ring world's defensive platforms. His squadron moved through space like a school of predatory fish, coordinating their attacks through telepathic links that spanned light years. Each pilot had become something that could barely be called human anymore. The hegemony defenders found themselves facing tactics that defied all logic and reason. Human ships would sacrifice themselves in attacks that appeared suicidal, but somehow weakened the enemy defenses. Others would merge together temporarily to create larger vessels, then split apart. When the tactical situation changed, Captain Mark Rodriguez commanded a vessel that had specialized for direct assault operations. His ship could extend tentacle-like projections that could tear through enemy hulls or reshape itself into a massive ram for collision attacks. Mark himself had become part of the ship's living systems and could no longer survive outside its protective embrace. The battle raged across the entire star system as human forces systematically dismantled defenses that had protected the galactic core for longer than recorded history. Ancient weapons that could shatter moons proved useless against ships that could repair themselves faster than they could be damaged. Lieutenant Sarah Parker piloted a fighter that had evolved the ability to phase through solid matter for brief periods. She could fly through enemy hulls and detonate her weapons inside their command centers before phasing back to normal space. The alien technology had unlocked capabilities that bordered on magic. The Ringworld's population fled in terror as human forces penetrated the outer defenses. The enhanced beings that had once been Earth's children showed no mercy to those who had planned the extinction of their species. They moved through the artificial world like a plague, eliminating all resistance with ruthless efficiency. Admiral Janet Foster coordinated the assault on the Hegemony Command Citadel from her flagship that had grown to resemble a massive living cathedral. The vessel's organic systems pulsed with bioluminescent displays, while weapon systems that defied classification grew from its hull as needed. Janet had become something divine and terrible. The ancient rulers of the galaxy made their final stand in the Citadel's deepest chambers, surrounded by technology that predated most star systems. But the humans who breached their defenses were no longer bound by the limitations that had once defined their species. They flowed through the corridors like living shadows, consuming everything in their path. Captain Tom Hayes led the final assault on the control center, where the Hegemony's supreme leaders had gathered. His enhanced Marines moved through the alien architecture like ghosts, materializing only when they struck. The transformation had made them perfect instruments of vengeance. The last Hegemony commander activated a weapon designed to destroy the entire star system rather than accept defeat. The device began to tear at the fabric of space itself, threatening to create a black hole that would consume everything within light years. But the human fleet had evolved beyond the need for conventional physics. Lisa Brown's ship Nemesis merged with dozens of other vessels, creating a collective entity large enough to contain the collapsing star. The hybrid organism that had once been separate ships and crews worked together to stabilize the stellar collapse and redirect the destructive energy into hyperspace. The Ringworld fell silent as the last Hegemony defenders were eliminated. Across the galaxy, the news spread that an empire that had ruled for 50 millennia had been destroyed by creatures that had once been considered primitive prey. The balance of power that had existed since the dawn of galactic civilization was shattered forever. Tony Rogers stood among the ruins of the command citadel, feeling the satisfaction of his fleet as they fed on the remains of their enemies. The human collective had become something unprecedented in galactic history. They were no longer entirely the species that had first discovered the broken alien ship in Jupiter's shadow. The enhanced beings retained memories of their human origins and the values that had driven them to fight for survival. They remembered Earth and the billions of people they had sworn to protect, but they had become something far beyond their original biology in their quest to eliminate threats to their species. Other civilizations across the galaxy watched in terror and awe as the creatures that had once been human established themselves as the new apex predators. Some species offered alliance while others fled to the furthest edges of known space. The galaxy would never again underestimate the children of Earth. The broken warship that had started it all still drifted in orbit around Jupiter, a monument to the transformation it had triggered. Humanity had become wrath incarnate not through malice but through the absolute refusal to accept extinction. They had evolved into exactly what their enemies feared most: survivors who remembered, and who ensured that threats to Earth would never be forgotten again.